Hello, everybody. It is Monday, and it's been a rough weekend. It was a holiday weekend in the US, but it was rough because the news cycle did not stop. We always talk about convergence here, but we saw things crashing and colliding over the weekend, which are actually interesting between AI and Bitcoin and all the other stuff going on. But before we jump into our very interesting agenda, Mando, how are you this fine morning? Afternoon, I should say.
I'm doing great. Yeah, well, obviously it was a holiday weekend for the States. We kind of got one too, so very chilled. Market feels kind of unchanged, just stuck in this just below all-time highs or range highs and debating whether we're going to go higher or lower. I'd be interested to hear how CTO views it all after him saying he thought it would be a fake out last week. But yeah, seems pretty chilled.
And we did breach 110, which is interesting. And I do want to spend a second sometime as well, if you could cue it up, is Bitcoin dominance. Looks like it's about to come off a cliff, which could trigger AltSeason, which would be seasonal for the next 6 months. But CTO, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to today's show.
Good. Well, let's jump in and not waste anybody's time. I want to thank the moderators in the chat and everybody for coming, and Rusted Woods and Blazo and the whole gang. But we do have a pretty detailed agenda as always, because there's a lot of topics that people want to cover. We'll talk about the Dolphin Game, some of the crazy, just zooming out at the end of every quarter, we get to analyze the data and we get to look back at the last 12 months and exactly what's structurally happening in the whole space. We'll talk about credit card disruption. Is Bitcoin dominance going to dip? Is AltSeason coming? I think it is. I definitely think it is. We'll talk about ETH. They have a new fix. Solana, altcoins, Pump.fund being eclipsed by Bonk. Bonk is on fire. Mando, that's your wheelhouse as well. So hopefully you'll have some info on that. And then we'll talk about the speed and changes that are happening in the AI world and convergence world and politics. I always say you can never separate politics from markets because they're inextricably linked. And boy, did we see that over the weekend. And we'll talk about Grok 4 breakthrough. It apparently is in the latest leaked benchmarks state-of-the-art AI. So let's get into the story. Where should we begin? Why not with a chart? What do you think?
Always.
Okay,
chart.
Tell us where we are. What happened last week?
Yeah, so I kind of feel a little bit hesitant here. I thought maybe we would complete this flag and break out, but we didn't really. We stopped at like the breakout point, which would be this high. We didn't really put in higher high here. So I think there's two possibilities. Either we slowly creep upwards here, or another scenario that I'm preparing myself for is this. We could be that we're doing an inverse head and shoulders, which would be super bullish. But if you look here, then the left shoulder went down here to low 90s, and then up again here, then the head up again here. And we could go down to the low 90s and then complete this head and shoulders and break out, which would be a very generous target somewhere up here if that happens. So,
but one thing we do need to consider, I always say keep your head out the window, because the tariff tantrums on April 7th, 8th drove everything down. So could it be that it's not pure TA or Wyckoff, or just it's because of the actual macro and fears in the world?
Absolutely. I mean, for sure, that could be the case. Also, I'm just saying that if that happens, that is still part of a bullish setup. So a bullish setup can actually include a retracement down to low 90s and still be bullish. So I'm preparing for that scenario as well. Perhaps it doesn't happen. Perhaps we just, zigzag up here. But I've added that to so I have those two main scenarios here. That's how I'm looking at this, because we didn't really blast off here now. Yeah. So that's why I'm adding that into the picture. I mean, long term or medium term even, it doesn't really matter. I haven't changed my opinion at all. I think this is looking very bullish. Trend is up. We keep doing bullish setups. The narratives, the macro situation, like fiat is, what did he say? Fiat is hopeless, right?
Yeah.
Bitcoin is the only choice. And so all these things are happening now that we have talked about and dreamed about for so many years. Now it's actually happening. So everything aligns in a very positive way. Now we're only talking about like the short-term tactics here. That's the only thing I'm discussing.
Before we jump away from the chart, I like to look sometimes at the monthly closes on the bars. And also we have Muskmelon here saying highest weekly close ever yesterday.
And the highest monthly close ever also.
Exactly.
So here's the monthly candle, highest monthly close ever in the history of Bitcoin. And this is a very bullish chart as well. We cleared this level that we have here. It doesn't matter where you draw it. You still cleared it. Weekly as well. Was it? Yeah, it was probably by an inch the highest weekly close as well. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, it was actually. So, I mean, it's positive. Trend is up on every time frame. Daily, weekly, monthly. There's bullish setups. And then there's a few short-term possibilities from here. And we'll find out which one it is.
Exactly. So that's all good stuff. We have a lot of crazy accumulation data. So let's just run through a couple of slides here. This is the Dolphin Game from Practical. And what I always do every quarter is I look at the movement in wallets. I call it the Bitcoin cohorts. Who's buying, who's selling, what has happened since January 2020. And I've been tracking them every quarter since then. But you can see here from basically summer 2024, that little blue strip in the middle, they are called Dolphins. They have the average bag size, wallet size of 100 to 1,000 Bitcoin. And what I picked up on late last year was this is all treasuries. You don't hear about all the treasuries, but there are treasuries and there are companies, and maybe there are a few small nation states that are all stacking. That's all represented here, while every other cohort typically is not bagging. But just at the top right, two above that is the whales are stacking again. That's the 10,000 to 100,000 Bitcoin. They are back in the game, and that's also a very bullish setup. When these groups start to stack, they don't jump in for a couple of weeks and then jump out, but they do it for an extended period of time. So that's super bullish in terms of cohorts. What do you think, Mando, of the players? We know retail is not here, very clear from the chart. Whales kind of jump in and out. ETFs are stacking, treasuries are stacking. How do you view all of this?
Yeah, there were some headlines, I think, last week that a number of whales were actually the majority selling last week against some of these institutional buying. I just think this is what's going to be the foundation of why it goes higher. A lot of that group, that blue group, they're buying often for the first time with a longer term time horizon. So I think it's going into better hands again today. I think MicroStrategy said they're going to buy another 4 billion, right? Like it's just constant at the moment. I continue to be,
and that's selling a preferred stock as well, which doesn't affect the ATM of the common stock, which is very big,
which is nice. I just what you said there, CTO, like the move down to 90 or like something that would really throw us off. I don't know what that is. I'm not saying it wouldn't happen, but like when I look at this sort of setup and the people that have been buying, these aren't panic sellers, you know. They're not. It's not like if it goes down to 90, they're gonna have to sell or freak out. And I think that's quite a big difference here. So like, it just feels as though it's going into longer term hands with every successive day of these treasuries being announced or inflows into the ETFs, which have been very, very strong.
Exactly. And there is
the only narrative I could, just to comment on that, the only narrative I could imagine, because I thought about that. Well, if someone wants to drive price down a bit to try to liquidate late longers, what could the narrative possibly be when everything is so positive? The only thing I could think of was that the move of the Satoshi era, the 80,000 Bitcoin, or what it was.
And there was a bit of that on the weekend, right? So on the weekend,
exactly. So rattle that little bit and sell 1,000 out of them or something like that to panic everyone. That would be the only thing I could think about. But
yes, just to touch upon that a little bit, there is a worry within Bitcoin OG circles that there is a quantum threat to some of the older Bitcoin wallets at the moment, as in which includes Satoshi's wallet, as in they will be able to be, the encryption will be able to be decrypted with a quantum computer in the coming years. But and it's only going to affect the older wallets. But on the weekend, an older wallet started moving some funds. And the reason why crypto sold off at that stage is because, yeah, some people thought he would sell, but I think the main thing was that somehow a few of the Bitcoin OGs were saying, oh my God, the quantum threat is here. Like somebody has already broken the decryption of some of these older wallets. I don't really know. I've been trying to go through that as a scenario a little bit. Like you really need it to go to a rogue state, really, or like a rogue actor for this to go badly. Because like where the supercomputers are generally are like in the US or in Western Europe, or and either held by like nation states or Magnificent Seven companies who might like white hat the whole thing. You know, if Google or Microsoft are like at the forefront of this, and they can get into Satoshi's wallet, do you think they would go in there? I mean, it's $100 billion roughly, give or take, right? Like, do you think they would hack it as a white hat and just be like, or because we need it to be like North Korea basically for this to go really, really bad, or somebody who is completely profit driven, right?
Yeah, I don't think it would. I thought about that also. I don't think it would be possible in the West to say that I hacked it, so now those are mine. You know, I'm not a lawyer here, so I don't know, but I have a feeling that just because you can do it doesn't mean that you are, you know, allowed to take someone else's money. Here we're talking like a code is law and all that, but it's not really like that, right? Just because you can hack a bank doesn't mean that you can go there and take someone else's money. I think it would be the same thing here. So I think so too. It would be like a white hat operation. You know, the guy would get some reward or something. But yeah. I don't think some random guy in North Carolina can go in and take 100 billion Satoshi's coins and go buy a car. No, I don't think.
Yeah, I still think, you know, I've worked a lot on this. We're far away from quantum computing hack, even for the old wallets. Maybe 2028, 2030 at the earliest. And by that time, the protocol would be secured. So audience, don't be alarmed. We're still very far away from that. But
I agree 100%. I want to say that also. Absolutely agree with James. 100%. No one's going to hack any wallets here tomorrow. It's not going to happen. I was more thinking from a narrative perspective. If someone is intentionally trying to push down the price, what could you possibly come up with when everything is so positive? That's the only thing I could. You know.
Exactly. And here, Monty says the quantum scare is nonsense. Correct, Monty. However, there is a rumor that
how many OG Bitcoiners believe in this, though, right? Like,
was what and some of the OG Bitcoiners are like absolutely the most paranoid people you've ever met in your life. And that brings me to two things. First of all, a lot of people believe this is Roger Ver, his wallets, because they're very similar and the time lines up perfectly. And he strategically moved everything in the space of 2 hours. And the second comment is you have this group called CEP, which is the way of kind of tax-freeing. Let me see. I'm trying to hide this comment. I can't for some reason. Anyway, until it can come back, I'll figure out how to hide this. There you go. But the other thing is the CEP Strive company can now pull people's Bitcoin in and give them equity in the company. And a lot of people have seen the power of treasuries. So I think, you know, we've seen Tether move nearly 40,000 Bitcoin into Strive, and more is coming. And we're going to see that happen a lot over the next 6 months, I believe. In fact, Strive is up 11% today. But I want to talk about this. This is the structural rotation, which covers Strive and everything else. But corporates are now absorbing more Bitcoin than ETFs and holding for the long haul, unless, of course, poop hits the fan, as they say. And this could reduce volatility from short-term ETF flows. So we know that a good 30% of the ETF flows are driven by hedge funds for the carry trade. When they get nervous, they move out. Remember, the hedge fund goal is just to beat the S&P 500, but it gets deeper than this. If you look at the Bitcoin flows here, just in Q2 compared to Q1, you notice two things. Public companies, 131,355 Bitcoin, and ETFs, 111,411 Bitcoin. Remember, ballpark 40,000 were mined in the last quarter, and 250,000 were bought. That is interesting. Just those players, which aren't that much. And then if you look here from Thomas here, US ETFs bought 380,000 Bitcoin in the past 12 months. Just ETFs. Sailor bought more. Okay. Bitcoin is up 91% over that stretch. What price next year if they do it again? And I go back to what we saw in history when the gold ETF launched 20 years ago. The first year was good. The second year was better. The third year was better again. Mando, from your TradFi experience, do you see that happening with Bitcoin ETFs?
Yeah, I
A
do.
lot there.
I do. Yeah. I think with Bitcoin for sure. I think the impact might even be even more with some of the L1 ETFs. Let me put it that way, because I think that story is harder to tell and will only be told better, I think, with a little bit more time. But with Bitcoin, I would be very unsurprised if we see next year as a big rise. I think it's really interesting to see Elon basically come out over the weekend and link Bitcoin to this new America party, right? Like if this becomes a bit of a political movement, I'm not saying if it is, it will or won't at this stage, but I think a lot of Bitcoiners were kind of jumping to where Elon would probably get to in the next month or two, which is that he would suddenly realize that Bitcoin was a better store of value than the US dollar, given the unsustainability of all these fiscal deficits, and that's across the world. So like, I think this is going to become, there is a chance this becomes even a bit of a political movement here in the US. I think actually the America Party, with what he's saying, goes very hand in hand with Bitcoin maximalism, right? It's like a very much that is the tool for this political thesis.
Cypherpunk, libertarian, yada yada, that category.
Or just like everything's broken. Like just we tried to fix it. Now this is the new ship, basically.
But do you think because the right tried to embrace Bitcoin, but do you think that's just lip service, kind of in name only, but not true part of their ethos? And we know the left rejects it.
I said this to you, if you remember, before when Elon and Trump were friends. I was like, I wonder how this all ends. Like all these VCs are coming in now, and like traditionally everyone hated VCs, and now they kind of came in and we were going to fix government, and now it's all kind of breaking apart. It's kind of breaking apart with like this idea that it's you can't fix it. You can't fix the debt problem, the constant spending, the 4-year cycle. It's just impossible to get the right incentives in place to do that. So I think they thought that it could go hand in hand, and now there's just like disillusionment with a lot of that, let's say, business elite that joined the Republican Party around that time. And I don't think everyone is disillusioned, but I think Trump is probably what he's saying about the idea that budget deficits are just unsustainable is going to resound, like strike the right chord. I don't think that's necessarily a left or right thing, though. Like I think even a lot of people on the left would also agree that the budget deficits are unsustainable. So I actually think he could win over people from both sides with this party, basically.
Yeah, and there are rumors. So you always got to think, Elon thinks 10 years ahead. This one's for you, CTO, and great stuff, Mando. I agree with everything you say. He's not a fool. And he sometimes says dumb things and plays, silly actions just to try and pretend to others that he's maybe autistic or erratic or whatever else. But everything he says, he thinks about for a long time ahead. So, for example, FSD, that's a 10-year plan. That's not just random, just over the last 2 years. Putting cameras in cars and AI chips in cars, all that type of stuff. It's not random. And maybe there's a rumor that Elon is meeting with Trump next week. And the goal is to the American parties right now can't really decide on anything unless the vice president is a tiebreaker. And that's not good. It's hanging by a thread. The two parties are partisan. Everybody in one party votes one way, the other one votes the other way. So it's very hard to win anything. But, Elon said he just wants to get 6 to 8 players. And that way he can control those people to make the right decisions from first principles and not have all the grift and corruption exist in politics. He tried to fix that with Doge. He was not successful. Do you think all this is thought out? And do you think it is 4D chess? And do you think the plan is to pretend to have an independent party, but really just to take power from the left?
Personally, I think he's been a little bit erratic recently, but I don't think I agree with what he's saying. I don't necessarily think this has all been like a 4D chess move. I think I do think that if I owned like Tesla stock, I do think that sometimes he gets lurched in different directions, but you kind of know that with him. Like, he's had several different businesses. He's like, he like, that's part of the genius about him. I think it remains to be seen. I really do I think he is a very deep thinker. And like, sometimes when you catch some of the, just like the off comments he makes in interviews, you realize, wow, this guy has really researched a lot of different things to a very deep level. But I don't think he would have planned the last few months. Let me put it that way. I think he actually thought that, they were going to go in and actually be able to enact a lot of the changes. And this has kind of been a result of that. And let's see what happens. But I don't know if it's yet 4D chess.
But the Bitcoin news is huge. CTO, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about this a lot also. Like, my whole life, the general plan has been to keep the budget deficit under control.
Your personal budget?
No, the country, the budget of like civilized countries, like where I grew up, Sweden, US, every other country. They generally try to keep it under control. And I think Elon and many of us, we've talked about it here on the channel, showing this like charts going parabolic, and suddenly it feels like it's going out of control. Like the national debt is going out of control. And I think Elon felt it. And I also thought that he thought that it's possible to come in and get it under control. Sort it out like you would do in a company. Otherwise, the company goes bankrupt. You can't have that. So you sort it out. You cut the spending, you increase the revenue by increasing growth, and you get it somehow. You make a long plan to get it under control. And I think that he felt that if this didn't work, he was in there himself. He had supportive politicians all around. I think he felt that this is it. If this didn't work, which it didn't work, and then they spent more money than ever. It won't work. It's not possible to bring it under control. So that means that this could go haywire for real in a way that we haven't seen in Western countries for a very long time. And I think that Elon thinks more long-term than most politicians. One thing that impressed me with China many years ago is that they made plans not 4 years into the future, but 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. They have a plan for, is it 2049? I think 2049 plan, right, in China, where they aim at where will China be 2049. While very few politicians in the West think further ahead than to the next election, which is usually in 4 years.
Yeah, not even sometimes quarter to quarter as well. That's exactly right. I remember in Switzerland, everything was a 5-year plan, 10-year plan. The move to the US, everything is quarter to quarter. It is like a very, very different perspective. You can't plan.
Exactly. And I guess like to survive as a politician, perhaps you have to be like that. I mean, if you do 2 unpopular decisions, you won't be there long enough to follow it through. Someone else is going to win and they will reverse it. Because they win then on that populist vote. So it's a very difficult problem to solve, perhaps too difficult. So could it actually happen? The thing that all the crazy people here like us have been talking about, could we get like a reserve currency that's actually not fiat, that we go back to what it was before, which was gold, and now in today's era that would be digital gold, which would actually be Bitcoin? I mean, could it actually happen? We talked about it for so long, but maybe it seemed like a dream. Nothing that would actually happen in today's time and age, but perhaps it will. Perhaps this can't be fixed. Perhaps fiat will actually hyperinflate in the US and in other countries, and we need to go back to a more stable monetary system, which would seem like the best choice today is Bitcoin rather than the physical gold.
But it's so funny now. If this new America Party now wants to be pro-Bitcoin, Elon has Bitcoin on the balance sheet of Tesla and on SpaceX, and now you've got the new party wanting Bitcoin. You got the Trump administration wanting to build a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Everybody was questioning how they would fund that. Well, they have over 300 billion coming in now from tariffs. You could buy 3 million Bitcoin with $300 billion. You could take a tiny sliver of that tariff revenue and stick it into a Bitcoin reserve, and that doesn't impact taxpayers. That would be huge too. So a lot of having people fighting over our bags is great. I think that's kind of the big story. But let's move on. Let's talk more about some other things that are kind of happening out there in the world. This is from Joe Zhao, who used to be at CryptoQuant, and now he's setting up his own firm called Alfractical. And he's got some good stuff, but he said Bitcoin dominance is weakening and soon your altcoins will shine. CTO, pull us up the Bitcoin dominance chart and tell us how close we are. We know H2 is strong for alts. We know Solana always kicks off September, October, November timeframe. Is this time going to be different?
Yeah, so Bitcoin dominance, it is very, very interesting. And if we stay on the weekly chart, it has basically been a straight line up since 2022. Can you imagine that? Since November 2022.
Bottom of bear.
Yeah. Straight up, straight up, straight up, another straight up. And when it goes the other direction, it goes fast. Every single time there has actually been an alt season, it just lasts a handful of weeks, basically. That's how fast it goes. And then it slowly climbs up again and then boom, down, up again, boom, and so on. So, and when it really moves, it's violent and no one's going to miss it. I would love to see, I think it's really fun with the altcoin markets because it's more technical things to talk about. And I like from a just interest perspective, I think it's a fun part of the market. So I would love that to happen, but we can't really say that it has started. Of course, this could turn out to be the local top, but we haven't put in any lower lows or something here. So I hope so. I hope it's right, but we can't really point to something and say that it's conclusively what season has started yet.
It does look like it's teetering. So I can't quite see it yet on my charts, but it does look like it's possible. And again, H2 is good. Mando, what are your thoughts on H2? AltSeason.
I don't want to say it.
I will say it. I believe it's going to happen.
Because we're littered with the bodies of people saying it. I say this every time. I've just learned never to fade really Bitcoin, but I can see it. I can see a period here of what's interesting to me is how the periods for altcoin seasons is getting shorter and shorter and shorter each time. It just feels as though they last for originally it was months, then it was a few weeks, then it's like a week, now it's like a day or maybe even like a few hours. It's like it's unbelievable how short they are. So I can imagine this breaking down. If this breaks down for a long time, it's kind of remains to be seen. There's other times in that graph that you just showed before where clearly it looked the one from the post from the guy from CryptoQuant where it looked like it was about to break down, and then it's just kind of gone sideways, like the red patches, right? Like there's periods there where, I guess it's kind of gone down during those periods, but the dips don't look that big to me. So I think it's difficult. I think it's really difficult. I think Bitcoin, with the amount of money coming into Bitcoin treasury companies at the moment and what we've just said,
exactly, that's the game, and that's the money.
Yeah.
So Bo Hines came out, the crypto advisor for the Trump administration, came out and he spoke about the crypto market cap going to $8 to $10 trillion, maybe as high as $15 trillion. He didn't give a time frame, but a lot of people are talking about $10 trillion CMC. That would be a 3x from here. I don't see that happening this time around, no matter what happens with alts. But again, I think it's also a mistake to look at Bitcoin and alts in the same bucket because they're very different animals. Now, speaking of alts, ETH has a latest fix. Every 6 to 8 weeks, Vitalik comes out with a new fix. CTO, have you looked into this one? It's all double Dutch to me, and to be honest, I don't care. But we do have to share the news.
I glanced through it a little bit. I mean, it's not really what I want to see. I think the Ethereum has two issues. One is that it's too slow and too expensive on layer 1. The other problem is that layer 2 made Ethereum fragmented instead of becoming like a scaling solution. So if sticking with L2, they have to bring it all together into a cohesive experience, which it isn't today. These kind of things feels like a distraction, doesn't take us forward in either of those directions. I glanced through it a little bit. So increase the.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like a big deal. Just feels like a marginal increase. He's been doing these every few. Like he's clearly been working on the improvements on the L1. So I think this is some massive thing. That being said, I do think that ETH has got the most momentum it's had in many months. Yeah, many months.
You had huge news last week with Tom Lee. Him and I went to the same school.
It's a thesis that I gave on it when I said, look, I think it's in an okay spot because companies like that, treasury companies, are starting to spin up, and the ETFs having good inflows, and you get staking ETFs coming. Like that's the most positive sentiment I've seen in ETH for a while. It's interesting that like what has shocked me is that a lot of the ETH maxis, like the guys who've been in it for a long time, they really don't like people are coming back and being like, oh, actually, I think this is an okay time for ETH. Like I've been reading a lot of them like very bitter about the fact that ETH has become a bit more of a popular trade over the last month, and they've been holding it all the way down. They're like, oh, we didn't want you in the bad times. Why have you come back now? I think that has to go. That has to go. If you're really going to onboard people and people are like, oh, maybe there's a moment here for ETH, you gotta open them. You gotta welcome them back with open arms here.
Yeah, there's a question here from Miguel. You have to look past the speed topic. No, you don't. The way things work in technology, well, first of all, the problems with ETH, it is slow, it is complicated, and it's expensive. There is no world, and you can record this, you can copy this, you can bookmark this. There's no world that solution, that trifecta of badness survives. Everybody wrap your heads around that. Bitcoin can handle it because slowness is a feature, not a bug for a store of value. That's the difference. When you look at this, okay, for the third quarter in a row, Solana beats Ethereum and all layer 2s in revenue, smashes them in users, 10x more users than ETH and all layer 2s combined, etc., etc. It's basically Solana, it's Tron because they handle all the Tether transactions of the stable coin, and then Ethereum, and then Bitcoin. So that is just the way of the world. And then people forget that. But the thing is, what gets me, Solana does way more, has way more users. If Metcalfe's law, network effects, all that type of stuff matter, revenue matters, traditional financial ratios matter, Solana should not be trading at 25% of the market cap of ETH. And that's just a simple fact. And this is something I've seen. And you got Cardano trading at 10% of the market cap of ETH, and Cardano does nothing. The only people using Cardano are the people that run the stake pools. It's just the crypto market is completely illogical. So help me understand why the crypto market is illogical from a data perspective. CTO. They don't look at fundamentals, or as Ivan, our friend, says, pumpamentals.
Yeah, no, I mean, for sure, like a lot of the price action is pure speculation. So like Mando also hinted at, I mean, Ethereum could move because it's the second biggest crypto. So some of these people who have now entered the beautiful world of digital assets, they bought some Bitcoin, and then someone says, shouldn't we diversify a little bit and buy a little more of that, buy some of that second one also, whatever it's called, the Ethereum or something like that, and then they buy that one. So that's like the maturity, and that could move the price. I saw a calculation one time ago, many years ago. It was actually about Ethereum. Someone had calculated, what if everyone only bought the ETH they needed to do the transaction when they needed it? And then they had built like a whole simulation of that, which was very interesting. Of course, a lot of assumption, and then what would price of Ethereum be? And I can't remember at that time, maybe it was $500, and they realized that the price would be like 50 cents or something. Because if you only buy it as a utility, you go to the gas station and fill up the core exactly when you need it, and that's it. You don't need that many actually to handle it, and then there would be very little buying demand. So that is true for all cryptos. There is an element of speculation. People don't only buy Tron or Solana or Ethereum to use it for gas. We buy it because we think that it will have a higher value in the future, and that is not completely scientific always. It could be misguided even, that people buy the wrong one in a way.
Well, I remember in 2021, 2022, gas fees in ETH were between $100 and $300. It was brutal. You want to do a $20 transaction, you get raked over the coals.
But I mean, many people buy a coin and they never use it. They just keep it on the exchange. They buy it on an exchange and then they intend to sell it on an exchange. They never intend to use it for anything. Then they might go in there and buy, 20,000 BNB. They have no intention of ever sending a BNB transaction.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, what's not even on this list is XRP, right? XRP is worth 250 billion.
I know, and that does as much as Cardano does, which is bonkers.
So I think what we're trying to say here is that that's not the only people. It's speculation. Another form of that is store of value. Like people own these coins because they think, and I think this is going to be a general theme of crypto for a while here, because I think stable coins are going to come in. Stable coins have replaced a lot of coins here as the means of transaction. Like you don't necessarily need to send people Solana or ETH or even Bitcoin anymore. Like people can just send stable coins. So now the number one focus, I think, for crypto, I think over the coming years as well, will be what is the best store of value. And I think that weirdly, you have these currencies which people just are die hard, like, oh my God, this is my life, like XRP and ADA, for very similar reasons. Like no one really in the ADA community cares about the use of the chain. Like, in fact, if you bring it up, they think it's like fun. They do not care to listen about that. And I think Solana has got the best users, like 100% is the best users, but it just hasn't quite got there on the store of value front. And I don't know why. Exactly. I don't know why. I think maybe it's just the maturity of it. Maybe it needs another couple of cycles on it. Maybe you can't even argue that much on the inflation side, because XRP's inflation is like insane. They got like the foundation who's got like the whole thing basically. So
and the math of this, the tokenomics of XRP is ridiculous. They got $50 billion tokens in escrow, and they've been inflating at 8 to 25% per year for 8 years. I mean, it's just worse than fiat. Like,
I have no idea. XRP is one of the biggest. I do not understand in crypto, but it tells you that people own crypto for more than just transactions. I think Solana. What makes it crazy to me is that other chains which are purely based on this, like I know ETH is got the L2s and it's got this modular infrastructure, but other L1s like Sui, right? I don't know why Sui trades at where it trades versus Solana, for example, because to me the story behind those two coins is very similar, right? It's like a monolithic chain. We're trying to do high throughput, like we're going through loads of users, and yet like the difference between those two is nowhere near the difference in transactions or users. Like those are the things that kind of confuse me, because Solana does destroy everything else when it comes to like users. And Sui's, I mean, every single month 200 million Sui unlocks, right? Like I don't really get that.
And Sui just got smoked by Say as well, which I pointed out in a video 2 weeks ago. Anyways, our friend Raoul Powell thinks BlackRock and TradFi will be building on ETH. This is true, but everybody, like for example, Circle minted $5.5 billion in USDC on Solana over the last 12 weeks. We have Japanese banks building stablecoins in Japan on Solana. We have European banks, etc., embracing Solana. And we have all the other TradFi players. So yes, just because BlackRock isn't touching Solana right now, because maybe they don't want to dilute their Bitcoin franchise, because they are making more money on Bitcoin fees after 14 months than they make on their S&P 500 fund, which is a monster. That is, like, Larry Fink was on the money. He just cares about owning, managing money, running money for people, and he's making a complete fortune. But yeah, and then certain TradFi companies, I agree with Raul, when they want to control a system, they will use like a centralized one sequencer layer 2 to do that, a la Base, Coinbase, etc. So that's kind of, we get that. But again, I'll go back to my Occam's razor, first principles thinking: expensive, complicated, slow. That does not survive in any world. Or CTO, do you have an exception other than Bitcoin, where it's a feature, not a bug? From a technologist perspective, go back to your cell phone days.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the realization from those days was that if something is a little bit better, it perhaps is not enough. Like, we literally did it. We built the 3D system, and then we had a very good branding. So we call it 3D, which is obviously better than 2D. You hear it from the name, right? And it was better, but it wasn't better enough. Like, the 3D never became the biggest mobile system in the world. It was 4D that became bigger than 2D. Because suddenly it was more than like 10 times better. It was maybe 20, 30 times better. And then it was enough to displace the previous one. And so that was my realization at that time. If something is more than 10 times better, it will win. But if something is like 50% better or maybe twice as good, it's perhaps not enough. I saw someone in the comment mentioned like VHS, Betamax, for those of us who were there around those days. One of them wasn't 30 times better than the other one. Like, but if you had brought in Netflix streaming in that equation and an actual internet that worked, or you brought in a hard disk player or something that was like monumentally better, and everyone will, there's no comparison anymore, then that would have won.
XRP is 130 billion. XRP is 130. It's not just Bitcoin. What you just said there, James. It's like there's so many examples of this now in crypto where we're like, how is this worth that? Like, how? Yeah. How? Yeah. No one even uses XRP. So like, that for me is way more of a misnomer than Bitcoin. Like, that just sitting there at the number 4th, basically the number 3rd crypto, kind of just tells you that like how do we value these things? Because like the traditional value models, I think, just break down.
And this is where community matters a lot. So you have like Cardano YouTubers that have big staking pools, and they just pump Cardano, saying it's the best thing since sliced bread. You have the XRP army. You cross them, they'll make your life hell. This is the community aspect that just suck people in, because they're saying, I remember the guy called Buttboy or something, he used to have videos saying XRP is going to $100. And I'm like, does this guy even know how many tokens they have? Multiply the number of tokens by $100, you have 10 times the global wealth on the planet. It's just, there's no logic in anything that's said, but people suck it up because they looked at, oh, I can buy it at 70 cents. It's going to $100. Get me some of that. And they will wait. They will wait forever.
XRP is up 7% this week. It's the best performer at the top 10 coins. XRP again. And I just don't get it. Like, I think it's just, we have to appreciate that. Like, you kind of have to like your coins for themselves, because when you try and do rel-val in crypto, you lose your mind. Like, your mind you're just like, wow, this doesn't make any sense.
This is a crazy one. So I bought one of the Solana phones, just for giggles. I don't think I've ever used it, but it had a wallet. It came with NFTs. It came with a bunch of Bonk and some other stuff. It came with over $2,000 worth of assets, and I can't remember what it cost, like $500 or something. I thought it was crazy. But now we have this, and again, it goes back to community and the importance of community. And maybe you can help me understand this, Manda, because I don't understand. I have Bonk. I never sold any Bonk. I still have it somewhere, probably on that same phone, if I find out where the phone is. But that just flipped pump.fun, which has made more revenue than pretty much many of the ETH chains combined. Can you help us understand this? Why?
Yeah, so this has been a pretty weak period for memes in general, right? Like and this is a flip on the way down, if you know what I mean. Like this hasn't been like they're both competing on the way up and one's won. Like, but Bonk has launched its own launchpad. It's partnered with Radium again. So if you want another way to play this, you can either play this with Bonk or with Radium. And they have just reflipped Pump Fun in terms of graduations of meme coins, which is like above, I think it's 80K on the platform. Sometimes it's above 500K, they class this. But Bonk's native launchpad has flipped Pump Fun. It's a very interesting time because Pump Fun is meant to launch a token in the next 2 weeks. And so this has happened at the worst possible time for Pump Fun because they've waited all cycle. And then the moment they're going to launch their token, they just got flipped by another platform. I don't necessarily think it's onboarding new users or it's like anyone new is coming to that space, but yeah, Bonk just flipped it. Bonk has buybacks in their token, so Bonk has been one of the best performers out of the major meme coins. It already had like a bot as well, so it's always had this built in. It's always been a bit of meme, a bit of DeFi kind of Bonk. And yeah, it's interesting. Like if you're involved in the Solana trenches, there's been a lot of hate on Pump Fun because they just take all the SOL that they make and just sell it. And Bonk plus Radium both have like buyback models. They're seen as a bit more Web3. They're kind of seen as the good guys in this fight, if I'm honest, because Pump Fun are also threatening to create their own chain and just kind of like leave Solana. So
yeah,
it's generally seen as this is a good thing.
That's because. Do you have any Bonk? Personal question.
I don't have any Bonk. But there is.
I can't believe I own a meme coin and you don't. That's
number one influencer in Solana at the moment is a guy called Bonk. His name is Bonk Guy, or that's his like pseudonym. And he's now like everyone follows him. He's been calling a lot of these coins, and he got tied to this launch pad. There's a coin which just went to 250 million, which is called a useless coin, and he was like one of the main components of that.
There's a whole bunch of funny names. Like I won't even mention them in case people go out and buy them. It's too dangerous. But the words are funny. Another crazy news too. A lot of people are thinking, and I don't see this happening. You know, people are trying to bring Lightning back to life and grow network effects. Lightning has been kind of stagnant for the longest time. The CTO, from a technology perspective, maybe you can add some detail as to why, but this was floating around that credit cards could be disrupted by fees under 0.01% using Bitcoin, when, of course, Solana is going to disrupt the payments business and credit card business.
Payments are going to get completely disrupted. I'm 100% sure. A combination of crypto as a technology, the stable coins, and so on. Specifically the question, I don't think small transactions don't need to be a Lightning transaction. Lightning is too complicated. I don't think it's going to take off. A better solution, if you have to use Bitcoin, it's fine to have transactions custodial in small amounts. Like today, I bought 2 lollipops and paid with card. It doesn't need to be a Lightning transaction. It's fine to have a small amount that is custodial and is settled, for example, daily. Same like credit cards do. When you pay with something with credit card, the money doesn't go away immediately. There is like a settlement procedure. That's just how it works. It's just that they've gotten used to charging these incredible fees, like Visa, MasterCard. It says here 1.5%, 3%, but then there's often usually a payment processor also. As a business owner, you don't have the direct connection with, say, MasterCard. You go through Stripe or PayPal or some other payment processor that is a middleman there. And they also take fees. So to collect money in like a global world like we're living today, it costs like 4 to 5%. And if you use PayPal, it's up to 10%. People don't understand how much money it is, but it's a lot of money. And that can be done much better and will be done better and cheaper by like 10 times cheaper, 100 times cheaper with crypto. But I don't think it's going to be Lightning network. I think it's too complicated way to do it. It's better to do it with stable coins on, for example, Solana, and just like a modern infrastructure. Lower cost, less problems, easier to manage, And that's, I think, how it will be done. And I think all these companies, MasterCard, Visa, they're in for an enormous disruption.
Rude awake. And Visa, and fairness to them as well as MasterCard, they know it. And they were investing heavily in blockchain teams. I think Visa in Foster City has 100 people working on blockchain. So they know what's coming, and they are embracing the change, which is the right thing to do. One of the things that I think is always overlooked in technology, and me looking at the technology for 35 years, is user experience. Okay, people think, oh, well, it works and it's first mover and therefore it's good. But to overlook ease of use by the masses is crazy. When I go back to AOL and CompuServe back in the early 90s, they got adoption because anybody could plug it in and make it work with phone dial-up and stuff like that. Mando, CTO just mentioned Lightning is hard to use. Other chains are easier to use. How important is UX, user experience, ease of use for anything today?
Yeah, super important. But I do think the majority of users of crypto perhaps won't realize they're using crypto in the future. So I do think that some of the difficulties around the chain the users might not see it. Like, we really feel it when we're using like Phantom, for example. It's like a really great experience versus something else. But I do think that some of the other major financial platforms, which then build on top of this, will make it a little bit more seamless for people. But I don't think Bitcoin's going to win the payments game. I really don't. Like, I feel pretty strongly that it's not going to win that.
No, it can't support payments at whatever it is, 7 transactions per second. Even with scalability on top of it, it's not going to happen. And that's the big problem with this. And if Visa are embracing blockchain technology, they will still want to charge so they make as much profit. No, they're going to have to cannibalize themselves, just like Google's going to have to cannibalize themselves for search and everything else. And that's just the way of the world. Technology disrupts, and creative destruction is a thing. And there's all sorts of dilemmas that these companies are facing right now. But the way to survive disruption is to keep reinventing yourself. CTO, you've seen this during your entire life. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a term for it. I don't know if it's an international term, but in Sweden we call it the faucet trap. Faucet had the complete world dominance on calculators. Every office in the world had like a faucet calculator to add up numbers. And then came the electronic calculators from Japan instead, and displaced them from monopoly, not monopoly, but complete dominance worldwide to be irrelevant in 6 months. And
like BlackBerry.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a ton of those examples, and I think we're seeing another one in process now. It's the payment systems. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen again. But I still don't think it's going to be Lightning. And I want to, if someone is a huge fan here, I challenge everyone here to download, say, Electrum wallet and try to send a Lightning transaction. Only after you tried it, you will realize what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I tried it years ago. I couldn't get it done. So I understand. And we're talking about something as well that is speed. One of the things I've noticed as well, the compression of timelines. Mando, you hinted at it with AltSeason. It used to be 2 months, then 4 weeks, then 2 weeks. Who knows what it's going to be now? Maybe 18 hours. Speed, risk happens fast. And with technology, risk is happening faster. And CTO, you see this as well with your faucet calculator example, destroyed in 6 months. But we've seen a radical turnaround that retail investors, the shout out to the audience here, saw this happening. And also, if you look at the high blue chart on the right, 43.3% off the bottom since April 8th. This is, first of all, it left all other sectors in the dust. And second of all, it is the fastest recovery in the history of the world. Okay, risk happens fast. How do you guys reckon with managing money, managing portfolios, and the speed at which things change, not only to the downside, but also to the upside? What do you, this is so important for the audience here. And what do you advise? I always say seatbelts, like a plane dropping from 35,000 feet to 10,000 feet to get out of a storm or something. But this is scary. Mando, have you seen something go up 43.3%, an entire index of technology in 2 months?
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. I think part of it is just training your brain to recognize that lower prices are the time to buy and higher prices are normally a time to be a bit more cautious. So like when CTOs on here being like, this is a time to be cautious, it is. Like it's at 109K on Bitcoin, it's 100% more of a time to be cautious. And at stocks at all-time highs, you feel your brain is telling you want to buy more and go all in. And actually your brain should be saying, hey, this is a bit more a risky time. Don't go all in, or like if you've had a massive run up, keep your chips off the table. And similarly, those moments where it feels terrible, you've got to be training your brain to think the other way. So, but I've been very surprised at this bounce back. Like I really was. I didn't buy anywhere near enough that I should have, even though, I think we were on this show very publicly saying we should buy Bitcoin. I didn't buy stocks in the same way that I should have. I missed NVIDIA, for example. I've said that on this show a couple of times. That like I didn't buy that dip. I mainly put my money into crypto quickly on the dips. But yeah, this is very common. Like
I remember seeing $88 in NVIDIA, and I know 8 is a good luck number in Asia CTOs. You probably know as well. When you see 88 pop up, and it came off like 160, it's half off. You cannot not jump into those burning buildings, And
I was at the time, I was thinking, like, Chinese firms are catching up. Maybe it was around the time of DeepSeek, and it was always like, this is going to be a moment. And I was like, maybe it could go a little bit lower. It's had such a monumental run up, and sometimes those stocks, they don't give you many opportunities. Like you need that to be able to buy it. So, but that's the case for everything, and I think I'm not necessarily super surprised by this going the V shape that we've seen. We've seen that quite a lot over the last few years in terms of recoveries.
Exactly. CTO, how do you calibrate for the speed of the markets today?
Yeah, I was actually surprised that we got this fast and this big recovery in stocks. I wouldn't have guessed it. In tech stocks, exactly. In tech stocks, I wouldn't have guessed that it would come back this quickly with the tariff discussions still going on and all that. But there is such power in technology, and we talked about it many times. Like later, when zooming out on NVIDIA or something like that, you barely see this tariff debacle and all the crises that have been here. It's barely visible in the chart. Technology punches through all these political ups and downs and market up and down. The technology trends are stronger than the political events. That's a key conclusion. But I wouldn't have guessed that we had this strong recovery this fast. I thought it would take. We talked about it here also. I said that there is no way in the universe that Trump, which everyone can agree on, has a quite big ego. Love him or hate him, I think that's one thing everyone agrees on. And I said that before his 4 years is over, he will do everything to pump the market, anything, no matter what, he will do it. And I felt quite confident in that, but I didn't think that the recovery would happen like in 2 months. No, I didn't think so.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Fantastic, amazing, I love it.
Crazy. And then the pain of being public, this is an interesting one. Everybody's looking to find exposure to SpaceX. There are a number of ways to do that. But Elon would love to find a way, and maybe he will with the new X app, with the Everything app, to find a way to go public without having the wrath of the SEC or being exposed to all the lawyers that are out there. There should be a better way to do this. But he mentioned being public is a pain. Everyone's SpaceX. So he doesn't need, like, SpaceX is already making a ton of money and servicing both governments, owns 90% of what's in space, has a global communications network that people don't understand the strategic importance of that. The security importance of that is kind of ridiculous as well. But this is the latest little breaking news, a little bit of the AI window here.
Can we touch on that a little bit? Can we just touch upon SpaceX? Like, I just got thinking about this a bit more. Just like, this company could arguably be the most valuable company in the world pretty soon, right? If you can give internet at faster speed than cable to the whole world, you can build a lot on top of that very, very suddenly, right? They just need to make it a bit cheaper and obviously have more things in space. But like, it's not just internet, right? It's like for defense, for access for pretty much any country,
a silver dome or golden dome, metal dome, whatever defense system. It's so important.
It feels like one of these unassailable leads that I'm just kind of like surprised that he just now has. Like this thing could be worth trillions, absolute trillions in the future, right? I kind of
I was actually thinking of something different too. Imagine if, because all these satellites, they're powered by solar. How hard would it be to move a whole bunch of GPUs into space, have them run off solar, and then beam the data up and down for decision making? So you move the data centers to space, running off free solar electricity 24/7. Is that a crazy thought? I'm sure somebody's thought of it before.
There's a lot of space in space, so I think you can do a lot of different things. I'd try and keep the US government on side if I were him. Like this feels like the sort of thing that can be worth just unbelievable amounts in the future.
Yeah, and I think the US government knows that too. That's why I talk about the 4D chess, and yes, erratic and emotions, but I think it's just I don't know. We'll see. But this is the final thing, is state of the art. Grok 4 has now smoked every other LLM out there. They have the most compute. They have the #1 source of data on the planet through X, Twitter, and everything else. Again, everything this guy touches, I know people hate him, and there's Elon derangement syndrome and everything else. How is it, CTO as a technologist, that everything this guy touches turns to gold? Why?
I mean, he's an absolutely brilliant engineer and business manager, and with a sense of urgency like no one else. So there is no doubt about that, and he has gotten rewarded for it by the market. So I'm not surprised at all. And like what you both talked about before, two companies could become very valuable. If we're actually going to space, the company that takes us there, that would be worth a lot of money. If there's only one company that can actually build the rockets that can take off and land and doesn't blow up with all the passengers, that's worth a lot of money. How much do you want to pay extra for the ticket for the rocket that doesn't blow up? And the second one is the best AI. Who can build the best AI? That's worth a lot of money also. And right now, he has a fair shot at both of those. And I saw there's like a huge fight now, like Meta is trying to recruit over the best engineers from OpenAI with like $100 billion package or whatever. That could weaken OpenAI perhaps. And if those two are fighting, that would be a huge opportunity for XAI. And like we talked about before, I feel it's so unfortunate that you can't just go and buy stocks in XAI and SpaceX and a million other companies like that are really up and coming, but they are private today. It's hard to get access. And I really hope and think that the tokenification, or like making tokens out of the stocks, will enable this trend. I really think so. And it will be a very exciting time that we, instead of only trading in quotation mark meme coins or something, if we could actually get access to early stage companies that is today walled gardened by VCs. You cannot get access to those companies today, but perhaps we will in the future. And I would love to see that. I think that would be amazing.
And we're seeing that actually. That takes us to what I call the tokenization of everything. That's on the cusp right now. And Mando, from your background and your experience, give you a couple of examples. What happens if BlackRock IBIT is tokenized on a DEX and people in the UK, retail investors in the UK, can't get access to IBIT? You know what they're going to do? They're going to turn on a VPN and they're going to buy IBIT on a DEX. So these things, all this decentralization and tokenization, will completely bypass regulation and traditional rails, and the whole food chain will be turned upside down, where retail investors will be able to get into deals early instead of the VCs and then the Wall Street bankers and then the investment banks taking all their chunk. can you walk me through that theory, Mando? Am I crazy, or is everything about to be turned on its head?
Yeah, tokenization is like the big golden goose for the L1s. I do think that it's difficult to imagine how that's going to be a problem for anyone that isn't is even in the US pretty soon, or to be able to buy some of these tokenized stocks. Like you said, it's so easy with DEXs and VPNs to kind of do anything in crypto at the moment. I guess there is this move towards democratization of finance, like making it accessible to all. We're going to be, I'm sure we'll be tokenizing, and we've already seen it. People talking about tokenizing things like SpaceX, private companies, like that wasn't available to retail investors not that long ago. The ability to invest in some companies, some funds, wasn't available to retail investors. I think the universe of what retail investors can invest in is about to go up a lot, because you just can't put the rails on with tokenization, basically.
Yeah, that's true. John McAfee apparently called it, everything would be tokenized. Good luck tokenizing ice cream. I don't know what the shelf life of that. Anyway, team, we try to keep things to an hour. We are, I don't even know where the clock is, just over an hour. That was a different type of conversation. It was a very special weekend, but the worlds are colliding, and the institutions are buying, and Bitcoin is looking as strong as ever. I can't look at any data and find a scenario that's bearish, especially with the treasuries and the ETFs. If year 2 is as good as year 1, we are going way higher to 160K. And that's also confluent with the money to M2 supply growth globally too. So with that, any final thoughts? What do you think of the week ahead, Mando? You know, the second week, the last 2 weeks of the month is always better. The first 2 weeks are always kind of a little turbulent.
I don't know.
July is...
The fact that we've just hung out here again, and then the way that CTO is talking, I would be unsurprised if we had a little bit of a volatile period. I feel as though we're setting up actually to like really break through towards much higher levels in kind of the early autumn, late August, because I think that's when we'll see the rate cuts and people will be like, oh my God, we're now about to see like an altcoin cycle, all that sort of stuff. That's when I really now think that we're going to break through. I do hope we break through all-time highs on Bitcoin, but we get so close so often at the moment, and then was that a lower high we just did as well? Technically, CTO.
It was exactly the same level. It kind of turned at the same point.
Exactly the same level. So yeah, well, maybe there's still some hope.
Yeah. Well, by the way, the links for Mando and his newsletter and his Twitter are below, and same with CTO, his website, YouTube channel. All that stuff are below in the comments, and you can watch everybody on their own channels. Of course, the idea is to get the word out here. CTO?
Yeah, I mean, on the medium term, I'm super positive. I can't see any other scenario. I'm super positive to Bitcoin on medium term. And then I try to be like contrarian to myself. I start thinking, okay, what could be the counter argument? What could be the obstacles on the way? And then I try to make sure that I'm ready for both situations. That's how I operate. I like that. And I want to be super clear that medium term, I'm very positive here. I'm just discussing different paths to get there.
Exactly. And I remain bullish. By the way, we could have some good tariff news coming this week, or definitely by August 1st, which could really accelerate the markets. And then, of course, put a lot more pressure on Jerome Powell to cut rates, which make us go even more risk on. H2 is looking good from a macro fundamental TA perspective, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Have a great week. See you all next Monday. Thank you, gentlemen. You guys rock. And Marty is in transit in Sydney. He couldn't make the show. Apologies for that, but hopefully he'll be back next week. Thank you all.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.